This may come as a shock to some, but link building doesn't exactly enjoy the sparkliest of reputations. And while we could and should debate the cause of this, for the scope of this presentation, we're going to focus on earning a seat back at the table where budget discussions happen. And with these discussions, the metrics and models are quite a bit different from the day-to-day priorities that we as link builders and SEOs use to do our jobs. Because when we're at this particular table, the focus is much less on day-to-day tasks and much more so on the outputs from that work, expressed in terms that can be referenced across marketing channels. And in the CMO's vernacular, those outputs discussed are not rank or organic visibility or even traffic or conversions. To get larger budgets approved, we're going to need to update our approach. This is certainly true when we report to the CMO directly, but it's also true if we report into, for example, the Senior Director of Digital Marketing or the rare VP of SEO or your main client contact of any title. And this is even true if that CMO or CMO twice removed is not asking for ROI explicitly. ROI may not yet be their go-to metric when submitting a request for more SEO budget. So let's unpack ROI together and get ready for that seat at the table. For clarity, we're discussing the actual return on investment calculation, not the general reference to some sort of positive impact or quote-unquote ROI. There are generally two ways that outputs from ROI are presented, as a percentage or as adjusted revenue. And most frequently, both the percentage and the dollar amount are used. This is how the calculation itself works. First, we subtract the cost of the campaign from the revenue we received. Then we divide by the cost. And finally, if we're doing this in a spreadsheet, we set the formatting to a percentage. If we're doing this with a calculator, we multiply by 100 to get the decimal point in the right position. But this is an either-or scenario, so we do not want to do both. Otherwise, it'll throw off the numbers. Let's look at a couple of examples. Here's one where we spent $100 and we made $100 in revenue from that investment. This would effectively be a wash. We did make some money, but only enough to recoup the initial cost. This is an example of a 0% return on investment. And one more scenario. Here we spent the same $100, but in this example, we earned $350 in revenue. 350 minus 100 is 250, which is the amount of adjusted revenue. We then divide by the cost to establish the percentage of ROI and set our formatting to reveal a 250% return on the original spend. So as we can see at the core of it, ROI is a pretty straightforward calculation. What's sometimes not so straightforward is the process of gathering the values needed to perform the calculation in the first place, and we may need to go digging or make some estimated approximations. In short, it might be time to make an educated guess. Ideally, we'd have access to robust conversion and transaction data in order to calculate a solid average order value, AOV, or better yet, customer lifetime value, CLTV. If that data is not available, it may be time to get scrappy and calculate your own AOV-ish value using data that's more readily available. Page conversions, average product price, something along those lines. Just remember to disclose your data sources and assumptions. And if your organization or client, etc., already has a robust ROI model they use, they'll let you know. Generally, there's no harm or foul in starting with what you have and expanding from there. A quick plug for working with internal teams. A number of channels like paid search, the programmatic team, etc., typically deal with much larger budgets, and their more robust financial models mean the values we need are right at their fingertips. So reach out to these teams to collaborate on metrics and values and adjust your model as warranted. Okay. We've worked out what we need for the process, gathered data, or have determined our assumptions, and we're ready to start working on our ROI calculations. Where you perform these calculations is up to you, of course. You can do it in a spreadsheet. There's a free template at linklaunch.com, or you can sign up for access to LinkLaunch, where ROI forecasting is built into the tool. And if you're not yet convinced the effort is warranted, you can also just ask ChatGPT to make the calculations for you. This is generally very easily handled by your generative AI chat interface of choice and a great way to evaluate whether ROI may be helpful without spending the time developing a model. Once you've decided to explore further, remember you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Using these resources will dramatically speed up the process, and setting up the model at the page or keyword level will give you more precise measurement and make your calculations and projections more reliable. And since this is SEO and we're playing the long game, be sure to measure the benefit or forecast the impact over time. Much of the impact from the links built will come after the investment has been made and the visibility earned. Now let's talk about what we do with these calculations. Here are two examples of how the ROI values might be displayed when projecting outcomes based on assumed milestones, such as achieving a particular position in search results. As we've discussed, using both the ROI percentage and adjusted revenue figures is ideal, since the CMO will likely want to consider both when making a determination about the budget, and forecasting the ROI over time will help show the full value of the investment. Here's another way ROI forecasting can be used: sample inference. This method can infer the actual performance of a smaller campaign onto a larger one. We're using actual ROI from a previous campaign to estimate the likely return on an additional investment, assuming the ROI will be the same. This is great for pilot programs, for example, where a small initial budget was approved and you want to use the outcomes to justify a larger campaign. Sample inference would show the potential return on that larger engagement. But what if the CMO just isn't picking up what you're putting down? Here are a few ways to handle this when it happens, or better yet, proactively solve for this in the first place. Absolutely be ready with your data if it's requested. Most CMOs will not have time to unpack a bunch of spreadsheet calculations, but for those that want to get into the weeds, it's highly recommended to clean up your spreadsheet and have it ready in case a question arises. This also is helpful when you're working directly with the CMO twice removed, and they will be carrying on this message to the CMO. But I don't recommend leading with it because it's generally not needed. What is often helpful is reiterating that the ROI calculation loosely aligns with ROAS, or return on ad spend, that the paid search team likely discusses with the CMO on at least a weekly basis. This will help map the models to each other and likely earn you more buy-in. Also, be sure to challenge your calculations. Maybe run it by the paid team or others internally to help solidify assumptions. There are a number of other things you can do as well. Get buy-in up front by including your CMO in the discussion and sharing your planned metrics and data points in advance. Role play with team members, especially those not familiar with SEO. This can be very helpful in preparing for rebuttals and questions and avoiding unfamiliar SEO speak during the final presentation. You can also mitigate pushback by displaying ROI as a range and measure over time using projected versus actual assessments to dial in your model and make it more difficult to challenge. Whatever method you use or tools you employ, remember to keep it simple. If we're putting up barriers or making it more difficult for our CMO to connect the dots, we run the risk of our requests getting rejected outright just because we did not take the time to fully dial it in. So simplify, simplify, simplify. This will help you create a presentation that has visuals and callouts that add value, showcases that potential value clearly, and generally makes it much, much easier to get a yes. When in doubt, leave it out. Be ready with supporting documentation, but don't just cram it all in on the slide, because I don't think it's much of a stretch to suggest that a screen grab from Google Search Console or a wall of data, WAD for short, is going to help you get that yes. Probably just the opposite. For the Google Sheet template or to sign up for the free Link Launch beta, check out linklaunch.com, and please reach out to me directly if I can help integrate ROI forecasting into your next pitch or budget request. Thank you.